Welcome to A Seeking Heart with Allison Gingras, distributed through Breadbox Media. I'm joined today by the author of Make My Life Simple, Bringing Peace to Heart and Home, Rachel Balducci. Rachel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Allison.
Rachel, make my life simple. This is a big promise, girlfriend. What was the premise behind your book, and how are you going to make this promise come true for me?
Yeah, okay, so it's funny because I talk in the beginning of the book about when I started to this concept of the book, it was really going to be a book of sort of how to manage all the things and do it. Maybe not perfect, because I've gotten over the idea of being perfect. Kind of came and went when I had 4 boys in 5 years, and I was like, you know what? That illusion of perfection is gone. Boys are awesome, but they don't allow you to, pretend that you're perfect. But I was thinking, we do a lot of things, and if we're organized, we can do them even better, and this is how we manage it. And then right around the time that I started to work on the book, some things for me personally just got crazy, like in my own life, commitments that I had made that were just no longer bringing any kind of peace to our family. And so I had to stop a job. I was teaching at the private school my kids go to, and I had to just at Christmas time not come back after Christmas. My husband needed my help. I needed to be more present to my kids. And so really the book started to become equal parts how to manage all the things, but then being okay with not doing all of the things, So basically what I do is sort of start there and then look at, okay, that's the bigger picture. How do you even know what you're supposed to be managing? And then from there, okay, all the different things that we do manage and try to do a good job of doing, what's a good way to do that? And then I kind of just go through and try to simplify all these different things. I think we all have areas that we kind of naturally do well. And I think when we do those areas well, it's because we probably naturally like to do those things. And then we have figured out a way to make it simplified for ourselves. And then there are all these other areas that are complicated and, clunky and overwhelming. And so for me, I kind of gave those things thoughts. Some of them I naturally have streamlined and, have tackled naturally. And then some are a struggle. And I'm like, how have I learned, or what do I need to continue to learn how to do better in these areas?
I think that promise, we can work with that promise for sure. I really enjoyed so much of your book, and reading it to talk with you was one thing, but I have a lot of notes to go back and be like, okay, now bring it to adoration with me, spend some quiet time and try to make these things part of my own life. I am one of those. I love that you talk about saying yes and saying no and learning not to say yes to everything. And I think by nature, I feel like women, at least the ones I hang out with, we're just yes people. Were you a yes person?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I actually just signed a contract and I'm working on a book that focuses exclusively on that. That's going to come out in the spring, and I'm really looking forward to that. But it is it's such a struggle, and I'm starting to kind of dig deeper with that concept now of why are some people, and I do think women, so inclined to want to say yes. Are we afraid to say no? Why do we feel like we have to do all of these things? And how can we learn to really pick and choose what's worth our time and what we really have to do? And that was sort of the big starting point of, make my life simple. This book was this concept of I had almost painted myself in this corner with so many commitments and responsibilities. And at the end of the day, none of the things that were taking most of my energy were the things that I really needed to be doing, and that's what was hard is yeah, I was committed and I was doing well, but what it was in those areas, but what it was costing me in the balance of, okay, but this is your main priority is your spouse and your family. And that's not to say women should always just walk away from jobs when it feels too stressful. But for me, it was in that moment, I realized little by little, I had tipped the scales of what I was supposed to be doing, and it was just so out of order. And I think we can definitely say yes to the right kind of things as long as we're always, thinking through, okay, am I keeping things in balance the way they should be?
I think women are kind of the OG of fear of missing out, right? The FOMO. We're the OGs of the FOMOs.
You need that on a shirt.
OG of the FOMO.
It is so true. And I have to really be honest with myself about that sometimes too. Like, am I saying yes to something because like of that, the FOMO, and the fear of missing out, the fear of not moving forward somehow, the fear of, not, and sometimes a false sense of the fear of the thing not getting done. Well, if I don't do it, who will do
Right.
it? Well, that's not my problem, which is weird though, because I can't, it's hard for me to say that.
My spiritual director once said to me that if I said yes to everything, I was being prideful and I was stealing somebody else's blessing.
Wow.
And that really is when I started to try to discern better, because I would be like, well, if they're asking me, then you must want me to do this. And the flip side of that spiritually is, you know what, the devil wants to keep you busy. And if you are not discerning the spirits properly with the Lord through prayer and through time with him, through the sacraments, especially adoration, one of my favorite ways to discern, then I don't know what God has specifically for me. And the devil might just be keeping me busy to keep me doing from the thing that God really wants me to do, which could be something not as spectacular as I would like, like those years spent at home raising my kids where nobody saw what I was doing. That was very important and that was very special. But there's times in my life where I was looking at what other people were doing, the recognition they were getting, or the opportunities. And I was like, well, I want those. But the Lord's like, you have those. And that's an amazing opportunity. So sometimes I think that balance, I think you talk about balance in your book.
Yeah. And I think a big part of this is trust too. And I think you hit the nail on the head with this idea of, am I saying yes because I want to be keeping up with somebody else is doing? That looks really glamorous. That looks really fun. Is this little thing I'm doing significant enough? And that's where we really, in the book, I kind of start with the practical and then work my way to the spiritual. But really, the spiritual is where it starts, but they're intertwined, But really, this idea of like, is what I'm doing what God wants me to be doing? How do I know that? Well, I really have to spend time. And for me, it is contemplation. And I have the best contemplation at adoration, but this idea of quieting myself, because that's where I'm going to really find the answers. Of course, using my husband as a sounding board is important, and a spiritual director. But if I'm just making decisions based on the flesh, is what I like to call it, then I'm going to be operating out of a fear of missing out of pride. I'm the only one who can do it. It's funny because I don't really think of myself as operating out of pride. It's more almost this sense of like obligation. But then deep down, I think, well, there's got to be pride wrapped up in it if I think nobody else is going to be able to manage it the way I'm going to be able to manage it, And sometimes we really do have to walk in trust. I'm going through something similar, just like trusting the Lord at this point, because just these doors open for me. And next week I start a new full-time job as a college professor, which I'm super excited about.
Amazing.
Teaching journalism at the school in town. Well, it's such a change of gears for me because, when the kids were little, I started my blog, and then that sort of opened the door to writing for our newspaper, which led our diocesan newspaper, which led to a lot of speaking opportunities. And, then I got to do the gist, which I'm still doing. But I kind of like created this identity for myself as like a Catholic speaker and writer. And I feel like, okay, this is this weird shift where all of a sudden I'm going back to what I did BC, before children, which was I got this degree in journalism. And out of the blue, it's like God just opened this door for me. But I had to kind of get out of my own way, because it's like, but I'm a Catholic speaker and writer, and am I closing the door to that? I really got really into it mentally. And I had to get to this point where I'm, just trusting God opened this door. It is peaceful. It is a wonderful opportunity. Quit clinging so much to what you think you're supposed to be doing or what you think your identity is. I mean, that's really the bigger issue. Is I somehow got that wrapped up as my identity. And one of the things I really had to do is make sure, like on social media, that I quit keeping track of what other people were doing, because it started to make me feel like I'm not keeping up. I'm not going after speaking gigs. I'm not, and it's like, well, the Lord is, this is the direction I'm going. It is bringing so much more peace than trying to build something. And I need to just be at peace with that, I love, and I talk about this in the book too, like the reality of our life is so wrapped up in the spirituality of our life. And that's how God draws us closer to him, is learning to grow in trust, learning to let go, learning to detach from the things of this world, but still be peaceful and joyful, all of those things. And they're tied together. And so that's where I think, when we make decisions, when we choose what we're going to say yes or no to, that we're really mindful of God in the midst of all that. Like, he really wants to be a part of all of that, which is good.
I think the word that jumped out as you were speaking, Rachel, again, we're talking with Rachel Balducci, and we're talking about her new book out from Our Sunday Visitor. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Make My Life Simple. And the word that jumped out for me really was the word of peace. Very often when I am faced with making a decision or feeling overwhelmed, I kind of know when I'm back right with God, when there's a restoration of peace. And I think you need to be kind of clarifying what that peace is. You may still not like where you're going. You may still not feel confident in how you're going to get through what you feel called to do. That's a different kind of that. Uneasiness is okay. It keeps us it's our thorn, right? Keeps us relying on God's grace to do things. But there becomes this feeling of just peace in the decision. Can you clarify a little bit? I mean, you talk about peace in your book. I mean, your first part of your book is practical peace, order within the home.
Yeah.
So is that the kind of peace you're speaking about?
Yeah, and it's kind of wrapped up in that, because I think when the bigger issues are bringing us peace, then we have that overriding sense of peace, and then we have like practical peace in things like having a good laundry system, having a plan for feeding our family, having a sense of control over our calendar. But if the big things of what we're doing, where we spend our time, in our energy, if that's in the wrong direction, then no amount of the little things is going to work. And that's really what I found, is like, I was looking at, okay, I can commit to all the things if I'm really organized with a good laundry system, putting away clothes on a regular basis, making a menu on the weekend, and then I can do it. And sometimes that's how you can tell even that you are disordered, is even when the little things are in good order and you still are running ragged, or you still have a lot of anxiety, then it's like, okay, what do I need to look at next? And that's kind of where I was at, was like, I've gotten really good at a lot of these different things. I'm able to keep my house in order, which is important for me. And I still feel super anxious, super sad, whatever these issues are.
Right.
One of the things that I found in the midst of trying to make these decisions is being honest with myself and with my husband. And one of the things that I recognized I was doing in that season is I was sort of taking on more responsibility and more commitments in that job, because I wanted to be a part. I saw where I wanted to be in the midst of what was going on there, if that makes any sense. And so I was quick to say yes to things because I wanted to sort of secure my position in a way. And so it was, that was what was motivating me. And my husband, it's not like I was not, I don't think I was really being honest with Paul at that time, and so it's like I was making a lot of decisions without really talking it through with him. One thing I've learned as a result of that whole experience was I now say, let me talk to Paul first. And I think that's such a good way. It's not me getting permission from my husband, because ultimately he's always like, you need to do what you need to do. But he's such a good sounding board for me, as like somebody like, and I even kind of revisited the idea of like, should I go back, at some point and teach again at that level? And he's like, it brought you no peace. I don't want you to do that. He's like, the fruit in our life, the fruit in your life, for whatever reason, that was not a good fit. I mean, it's funny. And I think women probably, or people can relate to this idea, because it's a lot like, working for the church maybe, or maybe doing volunteer work. And you're like, why wouldn't God want me to do this? This excellent school, this great Christian place, all these wonderful people, like, of all the things to rob me of my peace, why would it be that? And that's, to me, I've learned in the midst of this situation is just like the mystery of trusting in the Lord. Like,
Amen.
because, like, it's not so clear to me. It is walking with faith. I don't totally understand it, but I feel like God uses our humanness, the nature of how we're doing, to give us feedback of whether things are going well. Does this bring me peace? If it doesn't bring me peace, okay, how long, is it something I have to do for what? Like having a newborn usually doesn't bring people peace. Okay. But the newborn's here to stay. So then it's like, okay, but this is a season, right? If I'm committing to something that's an open-ended thing that is not bringing peace, then it's, okay, now we go from here. One of the things I talk about a little bit later in the book when I talk about the physicality of simplicity and peace, is this idea of like, there really will be times when what's going on in your life is stressful, and you can change as many things as you can. You can tweak things. I can get somebody to come in and help clean the house, or I can say no to some things on my calendar. I currently have 4 boys who are, I'm about to have almost like 5 teenage to young adult men, right?
Wow.
That is an awesome time, but it is uniquely stressful. That's a reality that's not going to change. There's nothing, I can't make somebody go back to being 8. I can't fast forward things to their, everybody's launched. And so then it becomes, okay, what am I doing in the midst of this season to bring as much peace as I can? And I do, one conversation that I had, and I talk about this in the book, is I left a doctor's appointment a couple years ago in the midst of trying to figure out why I wasn't doing well, with a prescription for Xanax. And I never saw that coming. Like, I'm talking to my doctor, and his takeaway from what I'm telling him is that I need to be medicated, and I was like, that was not what I was expecting. Now, what I got from that was, okay, I went in and I talked to somebody, and this is what he saw, as I'm a person that needs to be on these medicine, if I would like to be. What can I do within my life to maybe not have to go there? But I also think that that's a great option. Like, if there's really, like, it's stressful, you're dealing with a lot, like, happier living through pharmaceuticals, sometimes. Like, and so my point of the book is not to say every single thing in our life can be solved by quitting a job and learning to do laundry better. That's not the point of the book. But my point is, God wants us to have freedom and joy, and he gives us lots of opportunities to find that. I think it's practical stuff, like being honest with yourself, being aware, tying in the spiritual aspects of, into our real life. Then I think it's listening to our bodies. Like exercising is very important, watching what you eat, taking time. Self-care is a big thing, and I talk about that in the book too. And I think the concept of self-care is not simply getting your nails done or having what are you doing for you here, body, mind, and soul.
I actually wrote next to the exercise chapter, like, how am I going to fall in love with this? We have to kind of work a little bit on that. Rachel, also when you were talking, I thought about how sometimes in my own life, I have brought down the road of what I'm not called to do, so that I recognize that's not what I was called to do. So that when God puts before me the thing I am called to do, I know I say yes to it, because what I thought, like, I wanted to be a college professor. So, I got my master's. I was actually called to start teaching. And I had 2 choices. The day they wanted me to teach, I'd already said yes to do something at the church. And I picked the church. And I thought, I am making the biggest decision of my life. But it was, being put in that situation and having had a little experience teaching college, that I realized, okay, this is what I'm called to do. But I also love that, when people get to know you, they're going to look to find out more about you. So in the secular world, being you and being a teacher, somebody may connect with you through your Catholic identity that never would have before. So actually, as you were speaking, I was actually getting very excited how the Lord just uses everything. He doesn't waste a moment of the life he gives us here on earth. And I think that you make a great not argument, that's not the word we're looking for, but just a case for that. That's the word. Case for that in your book, Make My Life Simple. Again, we're talking with Rachel Balducci. Rachel, what do you hope women will get from looking at your book? And I think you shared a lot about that, maybe just a closing statement. And how can we keep in touch with you? And of course, more importantly, how can we get the book?
Awesome. Yeah. So what I want women to get from reading the book is really just, I want women to love their lives. Like I love life, but I also recognize I've been in some tough seasons where I didn't love life as much, and because the way my brain works is I'm always like an assessor. I'm assessing, okay, what is it about this time that I'm in this season that's making me love life a little bit less or less joyful? And I think, there's so many things that we can be mindful of, that we can tweak, that we can pay the right kind of attention to. And that's what I wrote in this book, was basically kind of my own personal way of doing that, keeping track of things, being aware, the things that I find that I can adjust to kind of find that joy. And just really the reality of God wants us to be happy. He wants us to have freedom. He gives us so many tools to have that freedom, real joy. I love just talking about the ideas of what even motivates us to say yes to things. And that helps us chip away at, it helps us get closer to God in the areas that he wants us to draw closer to him. He uses all of these things for his glory, which is so exciting to me. I just get really excited when I think about all the ways that God wants us to be free and full of joy. And so that's what this book is about. And, and it is a silly, it's a funny combination, because I talk about, Teresa of Avila, and then I also quote, Irma Bombeck in there too. Like, that to me is real life. It's like the joy of all of it. Just, laughing, but also knowing that God, like, he's with us in the laughter, he's with us in the struggles, and in all of it's just to get closer to him. So the book's available on Amazon, and it's available at Our Sunday Visitor. And you can find me. I have a website, rachelbalducci.com. I keep saying I'm going to start blogging, and I'm like, when is that going to happen? I want to blog again. That was just where it all started for me. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm actually taking just the month of August off. I'm doing like going off the grid, as they say, but I'm checking email. But kind of just, I feel like I have some stuff going on right now that I need to be focused. But Instagram and Twitter, and so it's it's just, I really hope that people, if they get the book, that they find encouragement, because that's what I really want people to kind of walk away feeling inspired, feeling a little bit more on top of things in their life, or at least with this sense of like the direction to go to kind of work on the areas that they know they struggle with.
Well, I love following you on Instagram. You're one of my favorites. You just,
Thanks.
It's always good for a smile. And I like when Instagram makes me laugh. I do not want to go to social media and be crushed by the world. Just saying,
I feel the same way too. Like, no need to make me feel small. Thank you.
There's enough of that in the world. I like being encouraged and uplifted. So thank you for being that light out there in social media. I appreciate it. Oh. And I was so blessed to be on the Gist in September coming up, and it was so nice to meet you in person. She is real in person as she is in her social media, which many people can't say. So thank you, Rachel, so much for spending this time with me today.
Allison, thank you for having me, and I loved meeting you in person too, and this has just been so fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We've been talking with Rachel Balducci, and her new book, Make My Life Simple, and her dog clearly is a little loving.
Gotta love the open floor plan where there's no way to like lock anybody off, So sorry. I hope we didn't edit that out.
No, I love it. I love real life. That's what a seeking heart is all about.
You saw a lot of my real life this morning, so thank you for your patience with me. Life's a little crazy right now.
Oh my goodness. I love that you are real, because it makes reading this book all the more connecting for me. Again, Rachel Balducci, Make My Life Simple. You have been listening to A Seeking Heart with Allison Gingras, distributed through Breadbox Media. God bless.